Welcome back to Danjo Trains. This video is all about train track. That means that I'll be taking a little break from the city today and working instead on the lower level of my train layout to prepare it for the old train shed. So, what exactly is ballast? Well, on actual railroads, it's the material that goes underneath the train tracks, which is usually crushed stone to help support the weight of the trains. For this video, it just means that I'll be making my LEGO train track look extra fancy. I'll be using 3D printed pieces from TrixBricks to ballast curves and switches, but first I need to fix a track problem on my layout. So here's the issue. I want to connect the old train shed to the rest of my track system, but I need to fix these gaps. I tried using some smaller pieces, but I was still stuck with the space here. The next idea was to redesign the switch that goes under the table. These are custom 3D printed switches that I really like to use since LEGO only makes one type. The one I'm holding has an R40 curve, which you can see printed on the inside of the switch. The other switch that it connects to is R56, so I think this could be the problem. Fortunately, the solution seems simple enough. I'll redesign this entire portion of track until I get the ends to line up together. Here's the section of track again with the R56 switch. I remove it and replace it with another R40 switch. Now I add some curved track to see if it matches up with my previous design. It does not, unfortunately, so I decide to try to figure it out by trial and error. This is definitely not the optimal way to problem solve a track connection problem. My recommendation would be to use a track planning software. In some of my previous videos, I referred to a free software called Bluebrick that was developed in open source for the LEGO train community. It's excellent for track planning. I'll add a link to it in the description below. That being said, it's actually a lot of fun to just play around with a large plastic bin full of track and see what you could improvise. But I was not able to find a solution and instead discovered a second problem. I did not realize it at first, since the old train shed was not complete, but I had to make sure that the track was also correctly positioned in this direction as well. Searching online, I quickly discovered that the set was designed to be compatible with a standard LEGO switch, which was why none of my custom switches would work. So I added some track to the standard switch and tested it. Sure enough, it lines up perfectly in both directions. Time to add it back to the layout. Underneath the table, you can see that I added the standard switch, but I have a third track now, and that's because I kept the custom R40 switch that connects to the main line. What this means is that I get another siding next to the old train shed. This matches the other siding that's connected to the standard switch. Now here, I can add a small train stop buffer. This is great because I want to have more room for freight cars on the layout, but I'm not happy with the space from the shed to the siding. Redesigning the switches was much less of a hassle this time, since I just had to make the two parallel tracks closer together. I found a piece of 3D printed track that was a bit shorter before the curve. Here, I have just a regular curve piece of track, and it does the job. I went ahead and installed the new switch, and I think it looks perfect. I'm much happier with the smaller gap between the siding and shed. With that problem resolved, it's time to finally start adding some ballast. So, I'll be ballasting two different types of curves, starting with regular R40s. The 3D printed ballast I bought from TrixBricks looks like this. Both parts are identical, and it takes two for one piece of track. They easily clip to the underneath of the curve. If you're a LEGO purist, there are tutorial videos on YouTube to do this with plates and tiles, but I find it time consuming and with less of a refined finish. That being said, the 3D printed parts are not perfect, and a few of mine had poor tolerance. Let's do the R56 curves now. Here's what the 3D printed ballast looks like for these curves. these parts are not identical. The thin end goes towards the middle. Everything clips together quite well. In fact, I found that these 3D printed parts had a much better tolerance than the R40 ones. You can see that they don't fall out when I lift the curve here. Normally I would also add reddish brown tiles, but I don't have any available, so that will be for another video. Now it's time to ballast all the curves around the old train shed. I have the footage sped up here, and I ballast the curves off camera. You can see a few of the ballast plates fall out as I move them. Like I mentioned before, some have better tolerance than others. The inner track is complete. Now I do the outer R56 track. And there we go. Now I just add the signal bridge back in. So we're not quite done with ballasting yet. This is the massive crossover switch that's near the old train shed. It's made up of 3 identical R104 switches. Each of these switches comes apart into 3 sections, and they easily clip back together. There are also 2 pieces of R104 curve to complete the crossover. I'll be replacing the straight track with these half sections, and you'll see why in a moment. I start by adding the half section to each R104 switch, so that it now looks like this. Now I do the same for the other 2 switches. Next comes the ballast. This comes in 4 different parts, which you can see here. They're slightly flexible, but still feel pretty solid. Let me go ahead and install them. That's one down. Now I do the same for the next switch. I make the same mistake of trying to add the small piece in backwards. Sometimes the sections can easily come apart, but this can be fixed by adding a gray tile to better hold everything together. Time for the final switch. And I almost make the same mistake a 3rd time. There we go. The switches look amazing with all the ballast. So now it's time to assemble. By having the half plates attached to each switch, I found that it makes it easier for the final assembly. Over here, I'm adding some ballasted straight track, made with Lego that also has the reddish brown plates on it already. The curves on top will have to wait. I managed to carry the crossover to my train table in mostly one piece. I was actually quite surprised by how well it held together. Now I just need to connect it with the rest of the track and make sure everything is correctly positioned. Just a few remaining pieces of straight track and we're good to go. One final detail for the crossover is that I'll add back this train bumper to the siding. And of course, to make this a proper siding, it just needs an old boxcar. That concludes all the work for this video. Here we can see all the ballast that was installed. There's still much more to add to the rest of the layout, but that will come later on. For now, it's time to run some trains. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next time, I'll be finishing the old train shed with a Halloween twist. Bye for now.